There comes a moment, often quiet, often painful, when you realize that all your chasing has only led you further away from yourself. You've tried, you've held on, you've fought for things that never stayed. Relationships, careers, dreams. They slipped through your fingers like water no matter how tightly you held them. And in the aftermath, in the silence that follows the collapse of something you thought you needed, a different kind of truth begins to whisper. A softer one. It says, "What is meant for you doesn't need to be forced." Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist persists. What you embrace transforms." His work was never about becoming someone else, but remembering who you already are, beneath the layers of conditioning, ego, fear, and noise. In a world obsessed with control, Jung asked us to notice something subtler, the patterns beneath our lives, the hidden threads of meaning that guide us, and not like a map but like a melody we must learn to hear. His idea was simple, yet radical. Life is not just random. What belongs to you will find you, not because you chased it, but because you became ready for it. But readiness is not something the ego understands. The ego wants answers now. It wants security, validation, control. And so we chase, we push, we grasp at things not because they are right, but because we are afraid of what it means to be empty-handed. We confuse movement with meaning. But Jung shows us that meaning isn't loud. It emerges slowly, from within, often through suffering, often through stillness. And it leads us, not to what we want, but to what we are. This video is not a manual for how to manifest your desires. It's not about shortcuts or tricks to get what you think you want. It's a deeper conversation about fate, synchronicity, longing, loss, and the quiet intelligence of the soul. It's about how your life speaks to you, and how what is truly yours will never require you to betray yourself to have it. In the end, this isn't about chasing, it's about remembering. And sometimes remembering who you are is the only way to receive what was always yours. We are taught, often from childhood, that life is something to be conquered. That effort equals reward. That hard work guarantees results, that love, success, and happiness are things we can obtain if we just try hard enough. But this mindset hides a quiet lie, that everything we want is meant for us, and that the universe owes us what we desire. Carl Jung saw something different. He saw how the unconscious guides us not toward what we want, but toward what we need to grow, even when it breaks us. When we try to force what isn't aligned with our soul, we step out of rhythm with this inner guidance. We confuse desire with destiny. And the more we push, the more exhausted we become, not realizing that resistance is often a sign we're headed the wrong way. There's a subtle violence in trying to make something fit that was never meant to. Like squeezing into a life too small for your spirit. A job, a relationship, a version of yourself. Forced because you believe that effort alone can make something real. But authenticity isn't born from force. It emerges when we stop pretending. When we stop insisting that reality obey our demands. Jung believed that when we ignore the deeper signals of our psyche, the dreams, the discomfort, the repeated patterns, we begin to live inauthentically. And the cost of that is high. Anxiety, emptiness, despair. Because deep down, something in us knows we're not walking the path meant for us. We're clinging to what we think should work, instead of listening for what wants to unfold. But why do we do this? Why do we chase what resists us and ignore what comes with ease? Because the ego would rather suffer in control than surrender to the unknown. The ego sees letting go as weakness, as failure. It cannot comprehend that release can be a path to alignment. So we keep pushing. We romanticize struggle. We tell ourselves that if we just work harder, love harder, explain ourselves better, we'll finally be chosen, finally succeed, finally arrive. But Jung reminds us, what's truly meant for you does not require you to lose yourself. It doesn't ask for contortion. It feels like recognition, not resistance. When you have to constantly fight to hold on, it may be a sign you're holding on to the wrong thing. Freedom begins the moment you stop trying to make things happen and start allowing them to, not with passivity, but with presence. There's a world of difference between controlling your path and co-creating with life. The former exhausts you, the latter transforms you. Jung's work teaches us to trust the unseen forces that shape our lives, to listen when something resists, not as a failure, but as a redirection. Some doors close because they were never yours. Some people leave because they were only meant to teach, not to stay. The tragedy isn't in what didn't work out. It's in wasting your energy trying to revive what was never alive in the first place. Let go. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to meet what's truly meant for you on the road ahead. Once we release the illusion of control, we begin to see something else, something quieter, more mysterious, yet strangely familiar. We notice moments that feel oddly timed, encounters that carry unexpected meaning, a sudden insight that arrives at just the right time. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence that isn't caused by logic or linear causation, but by a deeper connection between the inner and outer worlds. Jung believed that our lives are not random but patterned, not because fate is rigid, but because meaning is alive. Life, he said, is symbolic, and when we pay attention, we realize that everything is trying to speak to us. This concept of synchronicity defies the modern obsession with predictability. In a world that worships data, schedules, and control, Jung's vision of a symbolic interwoven reality feels almost mystical. But it's not fantasy. It's an invitation to remember that your soul is in conversation with the world. That dreams, images, encounters, even delays or breakdowns carry messages. Synchronicities are not magic tricks. They're reminders that your life is not just a series of accidents, but a path guided by meaning. The question is never, why did this happen to me? But what is this trying to show me? Fate, in Jung's eyes, wasn't about submission to a script. It was about collaboration with something deeper than ego. Most people miss these signs because they are too busy demanding answers. But the soul doesn't shout, it whispers. It moves in symbols, feelings, intuition. Synchronicity is how the unconscious speaks, not in straight lines, but in spirals. For Jung, this wasn't poetic embellishment. He saw the psyche and the cosmos as deeply connected, two reflections of the same archetypal reality. To him, the more you become aware of your own inner patterns, the more you begin to recognize how life mirrors them. That's why synchronicities feel so personal. They speak in your language, using the people, moments, and symbols that only you would understand. It's not about luck. It's about resonance. And resonance is never random. When you begin to live with this awareness, something shifts. You stop asking life to follow your plan and start listening for its cues. You begin to trust the delays, the misdirections, the doors that don't open, because you've seen how often they lead you exactly where you need to go. Synchronicity teaches us that what is meant for us comes not through striving, but through alignment. You don't force it. You recognize it. You feel it when something clicks, not because it was logical, but because it was true. Jung's greatest gift was not a method, but a mirror, showing us that meaning is not something we create out of chaos. It's something we uncover when we stop resisting the mystery and begin to follow its rhythm. There's a strange paradox in life. The more desperately you chase something, the faster it seems to run from you. We pursue people who don't see us. We force ourselves into situations that don't fit. We beg for love where there is only indifference. And in the chase, we lose ourselves, not realizing that anything you must constantly run after is likely not meant to be held. Carl Jung taught that what is real and meant for us does not need to be hunted. In fact, the very act of chasing often reveals a deeper wound, one of unworthiness, fear, or abandonment. When you chase what does not stay, you are often trying to fill a hole that cannot be filled externally. But here's what we rarely ask. Why do I feel the need to pursue this so intensely? What is it inside me that believes I must earn love, success, attention, or belonging through struggle? Jung would say the answer lies in your unconscious, in the stories you inherited, the wounds you carry, the shadows you try to outrun. The chase is rarely about the thing itself. It's about proving your worth to someone, often a ghost from the past. And so we confuse pain with passion. We mistake absence for mystery. We believe that the more someone withholds, the more valuable they must be. But that's not fate, and that's trauma. And chasing it only deepens the original wound. What stays, on the other hand, often feels so unfamiliar that we mistrust it. Love that doesn't demand performance, peace that doesn't come with conditions, opportunities that arise without self-betrayal. We question their validity. We push them away, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Why? Because they don't match the emotional chaos we've grown used to. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you're used to being unseen, you'll chase people who don't see you. If you're used to abandonment, you'll find ways to relive it. Letting go of what chases you is really about breaking the unconscious patterns that keep you locked in emotional repetition. The truth is, what's meant for you won't confuse you, manipulate you, or constantly make you doubt your worth. It will feel calm, grounded, clear. That doesn't mean it will be easy. It means it won't require you to abandon yourself to have it. But to trust that, you must unlearn everything you've believed about love, success, and belonging. You must grieve the parts of you that thought you had to chase to be chosen. Jung's work reminds us that healing is not about controlling outcomes. It's about learning to sit with ourselves long enough to recognize what feels real. When you stop chasing what runs and start trusting what stays, life becomes less about conquest and more about remembering the truth of who you are. The ego is not the enemy, but it is a filter, a survival structure. It forms around our experiences, our wounds, our fears. And while it helps us navigate the world, it also limits what we believe we deserve. According to Carl Jung, the ego is just one small part of the psyche. It's the voice that says, I am this, and I am not that. It defines the boundary between who we think we are and what we push away into the unconscious. But here's the problem. When the ego becomes rigid, when it clings too tightly to its identity, its expectations, its pride, it can't recognize what the deeper self truly needs. It cannot receive what's meant for you, because it's too busy chasing what matches its illusion. The ego often wants what is loud, shiny, or socially validated. It seeks achievement that others admire. It wants relationships that look good, not necessarily ones that feel good. It's drawn to what affirms its story, even if that story is rooted in pain. This is why we sometimes reject love that's gentle or opportunities that feel unfamiliar. They don't align with the ego's version of success. Jung believed that healing requires confronting this, not by destroying the ego, but by expanding our awareness beyond it. He called this the path of individuation, becoming who you truly are, not just who you think you should be. And that means letting go of the ego's constant need to control, perform, and defend. We don't see how many blessings we block because they don't arrive in the form we expected. The ego says, it has to come this way, at this time, with this label. And if it doesn't, we dismiss it. But the soul speaks in subtler ways. It moves in symbols and sensations. It nudges us through intuition, synchronicity, and quiet recognition. That opportunity you didn't consider, that person who felt strangely familiar, that idea that lit something up in you, they may not make sense to the ego, but the soul recognizes them. To receive what's truly yours, you have to soften the need to control the shape of things. You have to be willing to be surprised. The ego wants certainty, the soul wants truth. The irony is, the very things we think we need to get there, control, perfection, validation, are often the very things keeping us from it. The more tightly the ego grips, the more the soul slips through its fingers. Jung's work invites us to hold life with more openness, to ask not, how do I make this happen? But, what in me is ready to be seen? The ego says, I will receive it when I'm enough. The soul says, you already are. When we quiet the ego's voice, even for a moment, we make space for what's been waiting, patiently, silently, to enter our lives. What is truly meant for you doesn't require the ego's approval. It only needs your presence. No one seeks suffering willingly, and yet, when we look back on our lives, it's often the moments of pain, not the pleasures, that marked the turning points. Carl Jung understood this intimately. He didn't romanticize suffering, but he recognized its psychological function. To him, suffering was the signal that something within us was misaligned, disconnected, or unlived. It was not punishment. It was a call, and often that call could not be heard until life disrupted the ego's plans, the job we lost, the person who left, the breakdown that shattered our certainty. These moments tear at our identity, but they also crack open the shell of who we thought we were, allowing something deeper to emerge. The ego resists suffering because it fears loss, but the soul often speaks through loss. Pain, in Jung's view, forces a confrontation with what's unconscious. It breaks the surface so that the buried can rise. And what rises is often not pretty. It's grief, rage, despair, longing. But within those raw emotions is a hidden direction. Suffering brings us face to face with the parts of ourselves we've neglected, repressed, or forgotten. The life we built around performance and protection starts to collapse. And in that collapse, we discover a path not built from ambition, but from authenticity. The true path does not begin with clarity. It begins with chaos, and it's often suffering that removes what blocks our vision. It's natural to want to escape suffering, to numb it, bypass it, or blame others for it. But Jung warned that what we do not face will return, again and again, not to punish, but to be integrated. He called this the work of shadow integration, recognizing the parts of ourselves that we've cast aside. Pain makes the shadow visible. It exposes the internal fractures we've tried to ignore. But once we see them, we can begin the real work, healing not just the wound, but the belief system that created it. That is how suffering becomes sacred. Not because it feels good, but because it reveals truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is always the beginning of liberation. There is a strange kind of grace in suffering, not in the suffering itself, but in what it uncovers. Some of the most beautiful aspects of the soul, compassion, courage, depth, are born only through walking through fire. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And this is why so many stay asleep. But if you can learn to sit with suffering without letting it define you, something extraordinary happens. It transforms. It becomes wisdom. It becomes clarity. It becomes direction. The pain that once felt senseless becomes the reason you found yourself. Suffering doesn't mean you're off your path. Sometimes it is the path, guiding you not toward more comfort, but toward more wholeness. Longing is a quiet ache, a persistent whisper that something is missing, even if you can't name it. It shows up not as a command, but as a feeling, a restlessness in your chest, a subtle grief woven into everyday life, a sense that something essential is waiting just beyond your reach. Carl Jung didn't see longing as weakness or romantic indulgence. He saw it as a psychic signal, a message from the self calling you home. Longing in this sense is sacred. It is the soul trying to communicate through emotion what words cannot yet express. And if you listen closely, it always points toward something deeper, not what you want to have, but who you are meant to become. We often mistake longing for lack. We try to silence it by consuming, achieving, impressing, hoping that external success will quiet the internal ache. But it never works, because the longing isn't for something out there, it's for something within. Jung believed that every person carries an unconscious blueprint of their wholeness, what he called the self. And longing is the felt sense of that wholeness trying to emerge. It arises when your current life cannot contain your full truth. It is not a problem to fix, but an invitation to evolve. When you long for meaning, depth, connection, or peace, It means those qualities are already alive in you. They just haven't been fully lived yet. We're taught to suppress longing, to be grateful for what we have, to stay realistic. But realism can become a prison when it denies the soul's hunger. Jung understood that we are mythic beings, wired not just for survival, but for transcendence. And your longing is often the thread that leads you out of the ordinary and into the archetypal, into a life that feels aligned, purposeful, and alive. But to follow it requires courage, because longing often asks you to leave what's familiar. It asks you to grow beyond your current identity. And most of all, it asks you to believe that your desires carry wisdom, not shame. The question isn't whether you long, it's whether you listen. Most people distract themselves from their longing because it feels unbearable. But what if it's not meant to be silenced? What if it's a compass? A voice from the depths saying, there is more to you than this. Not more success. Not more approval, but more truth, more soul. Longing doesn't mean something is wrong with your life. It means something more is ready to be born. Jung taught that the psyche always moves toward wholeness, and longing is part of that movement. So let it ache, let it stretch you, let it open you to a life that's not just functional, but deeply, fiercely yours. We tend to see delay as failure, as punishment, as something gone wrong. But what if delay is not a denial, but a form of protection? Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not random or chaotic. It has intelligence. It moves at its own rhythm, revealing what we are ready to face only when we're strong enough to integrate it. Life often withholds what we think we want, not to frustrate us, but to prepare us. The soul doesn't work on the ego's timeline. You may crave the relationship, the opportunity, the clarity, but if you're not yet grounded enough to hold it will only collapse under the weight of your own unhealed patterns. Sometimes life delays because receiving it too soon would break you. The ego sees readiness as a matter of time. I've waited long enough, it says. I deserve this now. But the soul sees readiness as a matter of capacity. Can you hold what you're asking for? Can you embody it, sustain it, respect it? Life delays not to torture you, but to stretch you. To build the inner structure required to carry the external gift. Jung wrote that when unconscious contents rise too quickly, they can overwhelm the personality. That's why individuation, the process of becoming your true self, unfolds in layers. Each delay is a signal. There is still something in you that needs to be seen, healed, or strengthened before the next chapter can truly begin. Think of the things you once wanted desperately, things that would have destroyed you had they arrived too soon. The person you thought was the one, the career you obsessed over, the version of success that once defined your worth. With time, many of those desires faded, not because you failed, but because you grew. Delay is often the space where growth happens unseen. It's where your roots deepen, where you shed illusions, where you become the kind of person who doesn't just get what they want, but honors it, sustains it, and recognizes it as sacred. This is why the wait feels so hard, because your soul is quietly rebuilding you. So next time something is delayed, a dream, a love, a moment of arrival, try not to see it as rejection. See it as preparation. Life is not punishing you, it's parenting you. And the most loving parent doesn't give the child everything they scream for. They give what the child is truly ready to hold. Jung often warned against spiritual inflation, the ego's tendency to grasp for enlightenment before maturity. The delays you face may be humbling, but they are also invitations to deepen, to trust, to become. What's meant for you is already yours, but only the truest version of you can meet it. So be patient. Not passive, patient. Every delay has a purpose. There is a peculiar quality to what is truly meant for you. It doesn't arrive like a storm, demanding immediate attention or frantic chasing. Instead, it feels different, calm, grounded, inevitable. Carl Jung's psychological insights reveal that the soul's movements are subtle but unmistakable when we learn to tune in. When something is truly aligned with your path, it doesn't provoke anxiety or desperation. It invites you into a space of peace even amid uncertainty. This calmness is not passivity, but a deep knowing, a quiet confidence that what is meant for you will unfold in its own time, and that you don't need to force or wrestle with life's flow. When you chase what is not yours, the experience is often turbulent. The ego is frantic, restless, anxious, driven by fear of missing out or losing control. But what is truly yours waits patiently, like a steady flame glowing in the dark. It is not a fleeting thrill or a superficial win. It is a slow, steady pulse that resonates with your core. Jung taught that the psyche operates through symbols and archetypes, and the feeling of rightness is one of the soul's most profound signals. It's an inner resonance that makes you feel rooted in your own truth, no matter how chaotic the outside world may be. Groundedness is another hallmark of what belongs to you. It feels like coming home to yourself. You feel settled, balanced, and connected, not just to others but to your own inner landscape. This groundedness isn't dependent on external circumstances. Even if everything around you is shifting, the core of your being remains stable. It's a quiet anchor amid life's storms. Jung's concept of individuation, becoming whole, is essentially this process of rooting yourself so deeply that nothing outside can shake you from your center. When you recognize this grounded feeling, you know you're no longer chasing shadows or illusions. You are aligned with your essence. Finally, there is inevitability. The path meant for you unfolds with a sense of destiny that is undeniable. It doesn't mean life will be easy or without obstacles. But despite resistance, setbacks, or delays, the momentum toward what is yours never truly stops. It's like a river cutting through rock, persistent, patient, and relentless in its course. Jung believed that embracing this inevitability is part of surrendering to the greater intelligence of the self. When you allow yourself to be carried by this current, you experience a profound freedom. You stop fighting against life and start moving with it, knowing that what is yours will find you, because it already belongs to you. Loss is one of the most profound teachers of our lives. Yet, the pain of losing what was never truly meant for you cuts in a unique way. It confuses the heart and clouds the mind. Carl Jung understood that this pain is not random or meaningless. It is a signpost on the journey towards self-realization. When we cling to something that doesn't belong to us, a relationship, a dream, an identity, the eventual loss feels like a personal failure. But Jung teaches us to look deeper. This pain is an unveiling, a necessary unbinding from false attachments. It's the psyche's way of telling you that your soul's true nourishment lies elsewhere. We often resist letting go because the familiar, even when painful, feels safer than the unknown. Our egos construct narratives to justify holding on. I can fix this, I deserve this, or, if I lose this, I'll be nothing. But Jung warned against such illusions. The pain of loss shakes these stories to their core, forcing us to confront who we are without those crutches. It is a psychic purging, stripping away illusions and exposing the raw self beneath. Though excruciating, this process opens a doorway to growth. Pain dissolves the false self, clearing space for the emergence of something more authentic, more aligned with your essence. The paradox of loss is that what leaves us in despair often makes room for what is truly ours. Jung's psychology suggests that the soul uses loss as a catalyst for transformation, a painful but essential part of individuation. When we surrender what was never ours, we stop investing energy in illusions and start cultivating presence. This painful realignment is like pruning a tree, painful in the moment, but necessary for healthy growth. The ache that follows loss is the echo of the soul mourning a chapter that was never truly meant to be, making way for a new story to unfold. Understanding this pain as part of a larger journey shifts the meaning of loss. It's not a rejection or a curse, but a profound invitation to rediscover yourself. Jung invites us to trust that behind every ending is a seed of beginning, and that the soul's wisdom surpasses the ego's impatience. The pain of losing what was never truly yours is a rite of passage, a deep, raw initiation into the life you were always meant to live. When you embrace this truth, loss becomes less of an enemy and more of a guide, leading you home to the authentic self waiting patiently beneath the surface. There is a pervasive myth in our culture that destiny is something to be hunted down, a prize to be chased, won, and possessed. But Carl Jung's teachings reveal a far deeper truth. Your destiny isn't something to pursue in frantic desperation. It's something you already carry within you, waiting to be remembered. The journey of life is not about conquering or acquiring. It is a process of uncovering and reclaiming the lost parts of yourself. Destiny is not an external goal. It is the inner truth you were born with, encoded deep in your unconscious, whispering, through dreams, symbols, and the quiet voice of your soul. From Jung's perspective, the self, the totality of your being, is not created, but revealed. Your destiny is not a future event, but a timeless essence that has always existed inside you. The ego often mistakes this essence for something alien or distant, which must be earned through achievement or approval. But true individuation, Jung's process of becoming whole, teaches that destiny is about aligning with what is already true within. It is a remembrance of your wholeness, not a conquest of the unknown. This shift changes everything. Instead of chasing shadows, you begin to listen deeply, recognizing the signs and synchronicities that guide you back to yourself. Remembering your destiny means trusting the unfolding of your life, even when the path seems uncertain or delayed. Jung emphasized the power of the unconscious to orchestrate meaningful events, synchronicities that appear as uncanny coincidences, to lead you home. These moments are not random. They are the soul's way of reminding you that you are on the right track. When you stop forcing and chasing, you open space to receive. Destiny, in this way, feels inevitable, like a tide that draws you in gently but irresistibly. It is a call to surrender your need for control and embrace the mystery of becoming. Ultimately, your destiny is less about achieving a goal and more about remembering who you already are. It is the sacred task of reconnecting with your deeper self, the eternal presence beneath the layers of persona and circumstance. Jung's wisdom invites you to release the exhausting chase and step into a profound trust that everything meant for you is already seeking you, patiently and lovingly. What is yours will find you, not because you hunted it down, but because it is woven into the very fabric of your being. Destiny is not a prize to win. It is a home to return to. In a world obsessed with control, speed, and achievement, Carl Jung's timeless wisdom reminds us of a different path, one of surrender, trust, and deep inner listening. The truth that everything that is meant to be yours will find you is not a passive hope but a radical invitation to align with the rhythms of your soul. It asks us to release the frantic grasping that leaves us anxious and empty, and instead cultivate patience rooted in profound self-awareness. Through pain, delay, longing, and the quiet moments between action and stillness, your soul speaks in subtle ways. It tells you that what belongs to you will not be missed, even if it arrives differently than you imagined. Your destiny is not a prize to chase. It is a presence to remember, a homecoming to your true self that transcends time, ego, and circumstance. Jung's psychology teaches that this inner truth is encoded deep within your unconscious, waiting patiently until you are ready to embrace it fully. So, lean into the mystery. Trust the unseen currents guiding your life. Let go of what chases you and open your heart to what stays. The journey is not about forcing outcomes or controlling every step, but about growing into the person who can recognize and receive the gifts that life is quietly offering. What is truly yours will find you, not because you run after it with desperation, but because it is already woven into the fabric of your being, calling you gently back home. In the end, the greatest act of courage is not in pursuit, but in surrender. And in that surrender you find the deepest freedom, the freedom to be who you were always meant to be, and to receive all that life has patiently reserved for you.